Good morning, grade twos. For today's lesson, I would like to begin by asking you a question. How do you communicate with family members and friends who live far away from you? Do these forms of different types of communication take a long time or a short time for the message to be delivered? You might answer that you may call by using a telephone or cell phones, write an email, or send letters through post office. However, many of these forms of communication had not been invented in the 1800s during the time of westward expansion. Today, we'll look at how people in the 1800s in the United States deliver messages to one another. The title of our today's lesson is The Pony Express. We know that express means to write or talk about something, but in today's context, it means to do something very quickly. In the 1850s, mail delivery was not as fast as it is today. Airplanes had not yet been invented, and neither had cars. Railroads had been invented, but the railroad tracks did not run all the way across the country. Suppose you wanted to send a letter from New York to California over 150 years ago. The railroads could carry your letter from New York to Missouri. That might take a day or two. But the train tracks ended in Missouri. There, your letter would have to be loaded onto a stagecoach like this one shown here. The stagecoach could be pulled by a team of horses. It would bump along dirt roads at 5 or 6 miles an hour. It would take almost a month for the stagecoach to carry your letter to California. In 1860, 3 businessmen came up with an idea. They thought people would be willing to pay extra to send a letter if there was a quicker way for them to deliver it. All they needed to do was to find a way to speed up delivery time. The idea they came up with was simple. They would have riders carry the mail on horseback and run a sort of relay race from Missouri to California. They figured that a single rider on a fast horse could travel very fast. He could go much faster than a stagecoach loaded with passengers and luggage. They knew that horses and riders would get tired, so the businessmen decided there would be the rest stations along the way. The Pony Express was not an easy venture to start. The businessmen who started it had to spend a lot of money to get things set up before they could make any money. They hoped the US government would support them and pay them to be official carriers of the US mail, but there were no guarantees. After they decided which roads and trails to use, they had to set up stations along the route. One rider left from California in the west. At the same time, another rider left from Missouri. So riders traveled from both ends of the route to carry the mail as fast as possible. Finally, they had to hire riders and buy fast horses with great endurance for them to ride. The horses were chosen for their speed and their endurance, or for their ability to continue on for a very long time. Riders were usually young men, 18 years old or younger. They had to be tough and loyal. Riders would ride a leg, or a small section of the route, changing horses at each station. Let's pause and think. Do you think being a Pony Express rider would be an easy job or a difficult and dangerous one? Why? This map shows the whole route of the Pony Express. It started in St. Joseph, Missouri, where the train tracks ended. The Pony Express went all the way to Sacramento, California. The thick red line on the map shows the route the riders followed. The pictures above and below the route show some landmarks the riders rode past. Pony Express riders had to be ready to jump into the saddle and ride 50 miles on a moment's notice. They rode in the scorching heat of the day. They rode at night, by the light of the moon. They rode through rain, hail, and sleet. They galloped across dusty deserts and zigzagged up dangerous mountain paths. They rode across wide open prairie and through large herds of buffalo. They are stories of riders becoming lost in fierce blizzards and having to leave their horses on foot. Native Americans watched these riders and saw it as more evidence of an endless flow of people moving onto their land. Not only did a rider have to worry about himself, he had to worry about his horse too. Because the terrain was so varied, a horse could stumble and fall, or it could be spooked by wolves and stampeding herds of buffalo. Let's pause and think. If you were the Pony Express rider, what are some of the dangers that you might encounter? Here is a photo of a Pony Express station that is still standing today. There were more than 150 stations like this one along the route. The stations were located about 10 miles apart. That was about as far as a horse could gallop before getting tired. They made swing stations where a rider could exchange his tired horse for a fresh one and then continue on the trail. They also had some stations where riders could stay and rest while another rider carried the mail to the next station. The rider waited at their home station until it was time to return with the mail that another rider had delivered. If all went well, this is what would happen. A Pony Express rider would come galloping up. He would jump off his horse. Another rider would be standing in front of the station holding a new horse. The new rider would unhitch the mail pouches from the old horse and hitch them to his horse. Then he would jump on his horse and gallop away. The rider who had just completed his part of the journey would have been fed a simple meal of bacon and beans. If he was lucky, there would be some cornbread too. Then he would get some much needed rest. Both riders and station masters tried to save as much time as possible and be as fast as possible to get mail to settlers quickly. The horse could move faster if it carried less weight. Here's a picture of another Pony Express station. This one is called Simpson Springs. It is located in Utah. You can see that this station is surrounded by a desert and there are mountains rising up in the distance. Can you imagine how hot it could be riding across the desert during the day and how cold it could be at night? And of course, the rider would be moving in a cloud of dust. The men who created the Pony Express were businessmen, and their goal was to make money. They wanted to make sure everybody knew about the service they were providing, so they made posters and ads like this one. It costs $5 to mail a letter via Pony Express, which is the same as about $130 today. Lots of people use the Pony Express to send letters. Unfortunately, the Pony Express did not last for a very long time, and this picture can help you understand why. The men on the ground and behind the Pony Express riders are setting up telegraph poles. Once the telegraph lines stretched across the country, it changed things. People in New York could send telegraph messages to California. A telegraph message could travel from New York to California in a matter of minutes. There was no way the Pony Express could compete with that. The Pony Express went out of business in 1861 after only 18 months of service. Although the Pony Express did not last long, people still remember the can-do spirit of the founders and the bravery of the riders who carry the mail. This statue of a Pony Express rider carrying mail helps us remember this significant event in American history.